Introduction: The Modern Dilemma. Have you ever reached the end of a long day feeling completely exhausted, yet strangely unfulfilled, as if you've been moving nonstop, but somehow made no real progress? This is the modern dilemma many of us face. We are constantly busy, constantly responding, constantly doing, yet rarely moving forward in a meaningful way. In today's world, being busy is often seen as a sign of importance. We say yes to meetings, yes to requests, yes to opportunities, often without pausing to ask ourselves a simple question: does this truly matter? The result is a life filled with activity, but lacking direction. Imagine trying to travel to a destination, but every few minutes you change your path. You're always walking, always moving, but never actually arriving. That's what happens when our time and energy are scattered across too many things. Many people feel this contradiction deeply. They are overworked, yet underutilized. Their days are full, but their potential remains untapped. This happens because we often focus on what feels urgent instead of what is truly important. For example, answering emails all day may feel productive, but it rarely brings us closer to our bigger goals. It creates the illusion of progress without the substance. The truth is, we live in a culture that promotes more choices, more commitments, more expectations. There's a constant pressure to do everything, to be everything, and to never miss out. But trying to do everything comes at a cost. When we divide our attention across too many directions, we end up making only tiny progress in each one, like spreading a single drop of water across a vast surface. But what if there was another way? What if, instead of trying to do more, we focus on doing less but better? This is not about laziness or avoidance. It is about clarity. It is about learning to recognize what truly deserves your time and what does not. It means stepping back, filtering out the noise, and choosing carefully where to invest your energy. When you focus on what truly matters, something powerful happens. Your efforts become more effective, your progress becomes visible, and your life begins to feel intentional rather than accidental. Think about someone who decides to focus deeply on one meaningful project instead of juggling 10 small ones. Over time, their results compound. They don't just stay busy, they move forward. In this video, we are going to explore this mindset, the disciplined pursuit of less but better. It is a practical approach to reclaiming control over your time, your energy, and your decisions. And by the end, you'll begin to see that a meaningful life is not built on doing more, but on choosing wisely what truly matters. Part 1. Essence, the core mindset. Have you ever paused for a moment and asked yourself a simple but powerful question? Am I living my life or just reacting to it? Because the truth is, a life of discipline and purpose doesn't happen by accident. It is built choice by choice, moment by moment. And at the heart of this transformation lie 3 essential truths that shape everything: choice, discernment, and trade-offs. Let's begin with the first truth, the power of choice. Most people think of choice as something passive, like a menu placed in front of them. But choice is not a thing. It is an action. It is something you actively do. Every day, you are choosing, whether you realize it or not. You choose how to spend your time, how to respond to situations, and what to prioritize. Even when you feel like you have no control, there is always one thing that remains in your hands: how you choose among the options available to you. Think about a typical day. You wake up, check your phone, respond to messages, maybe scroll through social media. It all feels automatic, but none of it truly is. Each small action is a choice, and when these choices are made unconsciously, they slowly shape a life that feels out of control. Now imagine a different scenario. Instead of immediately reacting, you pause and ask yourself, what actually matters today? That simple moment of awareness shifts everything. Because when you take ownership of your choices, you take ownership of your life. The danger lies in surrendering this power. When you stop choosing intentionally, other people and the world around you start choosing for you. Your time gets filled with other people's priorities, other people's urgencies, and other people's expectations. And before you know it, you're living a life that feels busy, but not truly yours. There's a powerful truth to remember here. If you don't prioritize your life, someone else will, and they will do it without hesitation. But recognizing your power of choice is only the beginning. The second truth is discernment, the ability to see clearly what truly matters and what doesn't. We grow up believing that if we just work harder, do more, and push further, we will achieve more. But reality doesn't work that way. Not all effort is equal. Some actions create massive results, while others barely move the needle. Imagine two people working the same number of hours. One spends most of their time on low-impact tasks, checking emails, attending unnecessary meetings, handling minor details. The other focuses deeply on one or two meaningful tasks that actually drive results. At the end of the day, both are equally busy, but their outcomes are completely different. This is where discernment becomes essential. Most things in life are not important. That may sound uncomfortable, but it is true. The majority of tasks, opportunities, and distractions around you have little real value. Only a few things, a vital few, have the power to create significant impact. Think of it like a spotlight. If you shine it everywhere, nothing stands out. But if you focus it on one specific area, everything becomes clear. Discernment is about learning to ask better questions. Instead of asking, "What should I do next?" you begin to ask, "What truly matters here?" Instead of reacting to everything, you start filtering. You begin to recognize that just because something is available doesn't mean it is valuable. For example, you might be offered a new project, a new opportunity, or even a social invitation. It may seem attractive at first, but when you pause and evaluate it, you may realize it doesn't align with your deeper goals. And that realization gives you the freedom to say no, not out of negativity, but out of clarity. And this brings us to the third truth, the reality of trade-offs. One of the most persistent illusions in modern life is the idea that we can have it all, that we can do everything, pursue every opportunity, and still maintain balance. But the truth is simpler and more honest. You cannot have everything. You cannot do everything. And try to do so will only dilute your energy and your results. Every decision you make comes with a cost. Every yes you give automatically creates multiple no's. When you say yes to one opportunity, you are saying no to the time, energy, and attention that could have been invested elsewhere. But instead of seeing this as a limitation, you can choose to see it as a strategy. Trade-offs are not something to avoid. They are something to embrace, because they force you to decide what truly matters. Instead of asking yourself, "How can I fit everything into my life?" you begin to ask a more powerful question. Which problem do I want to solve? This question shifts your focus from quantity to quality. It invites you to go deeper instead of wider. For example, you might want to improve your career, your health, your relationships, and your personal projects all at the same time. But trying to do everything at once often leads to doing everything poorly. When you accept trade-offs, you might choose to focus deeply on your career for a period of time, knowing that other areas will receive less attention temporarily. And that's okay, because focus creates progress. Think of it like planting seeds. If you scatter them randomly across a large field, few will grow. But if you concentrate them in one place and care for them properly, they have a much higher chance of flourishing. The same principle applies to your life. When you combine these three truths, choice, discernment, and trade-offs, you begin to operate differently. You stop reacting and start deciding. You stop chasing everything and start focusing on what truly matters. And most importantly, you begin to live with intention. You become someone who chooses deliberately, filters wisely, and invests deeply. And that is the foundation of a disciplined and purposeful life. Because in the end, it's not about doing more. It's about choosing better, seeing clearly, and committing fully to what truly matters. Part 2. Explore. Discerning the vital few. Have you ever noticed that some people seem calm, focused, and deliberate, while others are constantly rushing, yet rarely making meaningful progress? At first glance, it might seem like disciplined people do less. But in reality, They often explore far more options than anyone else. The difference is that they don't commit quickly. They take the time to explore widely so that when they finally choose, they choose wisely. This is the second stage of living with purpose, learning how to explore in order to identify the vital few things that truly matter. And to do this well, you need to change the way you approach your time, your attention, and even your energy. It begins with something that may feel uncomfortable at first, stepping away. In a world where everyone is constantly connected, being unavailable can feel almost wrong. We are used to responding instantly, checking notifications, and staying on at all times. But the truth is simple. You cannot figure out what is essential if your mind is constantly occupied. Clarity requires space. Imagine trying to see your reflection in water that is constantly moving. You won't see anything clearly. But when the water becomes still, everything sharpens. Your mind works the same way. When you deliberately create time without distractions, whether the quiet hour in your day or a few days away from noise, you allow your thoughts to settle. And in that stillness, you begin to see what truly matters. For example, instead of filling every free moment with your phone, you might take a walk without any input. No music, no notifications, just silence. At first, it may feel strange, but slowly, ideas start to surface. Priorities become clearer. This is not wasted time. This is where direction is born. But stepping back is only the first part. The next step is learning how to truly see. Most people look at their lives, but very few actually observe. They get lost in small details, reacting to every minor issue without ever understanding the bigger picture. To live with intention, you must train yourself to see differently. Think of yourself as a journalist of your own life. A journalist doesn't report every detail. They search the core of the story, the part that actually matters in your life. This means learning to filter out the noise and focus on the signal. For example, you might feel overwhelmed at work, thinking there are too many tasks. But when you step back and observe carefully, you may realize that only one or two of those tasks actually drive results. The rest are just distractions dressed as responsibilities. This way of seeing also involves noticing what is not obvious. Sometimes the most important information is hidden in what people don't say, or in patterns that repeat over time. When you connect these dots, you gain a deeper understanding of what deserves your attention and what is not. And then comes something that many adults have forgotten: play. At first, the idea may sound counterintuitive. How can play help you become more disciplined? But play is not the opposite of productivity. In fact, it is one of its strongest foundations. When you engage in play, whether it's a creative activity, a game, or simply exploring something new, you activate parts of your brain that are responsible for innovation, flexibility, and problem solving. Play allows your mind to move freely, without pressure, and in that freedom, new ideas emerge. Think about how children approach the world. They experiment, they explore, they imagine. They are not afraid of making mistakes. And because of that, they learn faster and adapt better. As adults, we often lose this ability, becoming rigid and overly serious. But when you reintroduce play into your life, you expand your range of possibilities. For instance, someone stuck in a routine job might discover a new passion simply by experimenting with a hobby, like writing, design, or even learning a new skill. That small act of play can open doors that logic alone would never reveal. But none of this works if you ignore one of the most important elements of performance: sleep. In a culture that often glorifies hustle and sleepless nights, rest is sometimes seen as weakness. But in reality, sleep is one of your greatest strategic advantages. Your mind, your focus, your ability to make decisions all depend on it. When you are sleep deprived, everything becomes harder. You struggle to concentrate, your judgment weakens, and even simple tasks feel overwhelming. On the other hand, when you are well rested, your thinking becomes sharper, your energy increases, and your ability to prioritize improves dramatically. Think of your body and mind as your most valuable asset. If you damage that asset, everything else suffers. But when you protect it, By giving it the rest it needs, you multiply your effectiveness. Sometimes, gaining 1 extra hour of sleep can give you several hours of higher quality work the next day. And finally, after exploring, observing, playing, and restore your energy, comes a moment of selection. This is where everything comes together. Most people struggle here because they want to keep their options open. They hesitate, they compromise, and they accept opportunities that are only good enough. But disciplined individuals operate differently. They use strict criteria. Imagine evaluating an opportunity on a scale from 0 to 100. If it doesn't score extremely high, if it's not a clear, strong yes, then it becomes a no. This may seem harsh, but it is incredibly powerful. Because every time you say yes to something mediocre, you are closing the door to something exceptional. For example, you might receive an offer for a project that seems decent. It pays okay, it's somewhat interesting, but it doesn't truly excite you. Saying yes may feel safe. But by doing so, you occupy your time and energy, leaving no space for something far better that could come later. By applying higher standards, you force yourself to wait for the right opportunities, instead of settling for convenient ones. You stop letting randomness decide your path. You become intentional. And when you combine all these practices, stepping away to gain clarity, learning to see what truly matters, embracing play to expand your thinking, protecting your energy through sleep, and choosing with strong criteria, you transform the way you live. You stop reacting to life and start designing it, because in the end, exploring is not about doing more. It is about seeing better, thinking deeper, and choosing smarter. And when you learn to discern the vital few, everything else begins to fall into place. Part 3. Eliminate. Cutting out the trivial many. Have you ever felt that your life is full but somehow heavy? As if you're carrying too many things, too many commitments, too many responsibilities, too many expectations, and yet very few of them truly matter? If so, you're not alone. Most people don't struggle because they lack opportunities. They struggle because they hold on to too many things that should have been let go. This is where the third stage begins. Elimination. Because it's not enough to simply recognize what matters. If you truly want to live with clarity and purpose, you must actively remove what doesn't. And this is not a technical skill. It is an emotional one. It starts with clarity of intent. When individuals or teams don't have a clear purpose, something predictable happens. They drift. They fill their time with small tasks, distractions, and sometimes even unnecessary conflicts. Without a clear direction, everything starts to feel equally important. And when everything feels important, nothing truly is. Imagine trying to lead a team without a clear goal. One person focuses on speed, another on quality, another on innovation. Everyone is working hard, but not in the same direction. The result is confusion, wasted effort, and frustration. Now imagine the opposite. A clear, simple intent. This is what we aim to be excellent at. Suddenly, decisions become easier. Priorities align. Energy is focused. This applies to your personal life as well. Ask yourself a powerful question. If I could be truly excellent at only one thing, what would it be? That answer becomes your anchor. It doesn't mean you will only do one thing forever, but it gives you a reference point, a filter, a way to evaluate everything else. Because once your intent is clear, elimination becomes possible. But here's where most people struggle, the moment they need to say no. Saying no is uncomfortable. It can feel like rejection. It can create tension. It can make you worry about disappointing others. And so, instead of saying no, many people say yes, even when they don't mean it. They say yes to requests they don't have time for, yes to commitments they don't care about, yes to opportunities that don't align with their goals. And over time, these small yes accumulate into a life that feels overwhelming and misaligned. But there is a different way. You can learn to say no with clarity and grace. The key is to separate the decision from the relationship. When you decline a request, you are not rejecting the person. You are simply choosing how to use your time and energy. And when you communicate that clearly and respectfully, something surprising happens. People often respect you more, not less. For example, instead of saying, "I'll try," or maybe later, you might say, "I appreciate you thinking of me, but I can't commit to this right now." It is honest, direct, and respectful, and it avoids the confusion and frustration that come from vague answers. In fact, a clear no is often kinder than an uncertain yes. But elimination doesn't stop with external requests. It also requires something deeper, the courage to let go of things you have already invested in. This is where many people get stuck. They continue projects that are no longer meaningful. They stay in situations that no longer serve them. Not because these things are still valuable, but because they've already invested time, effort, or money into them. This is known as the sunk cost trap. Imagine you've been working on a project for months. You put in hours of effort, but the results are disappointing. Deep down, you know it's not the right path. But instead of stepping away, you keep going simply because you've already come this far. But here's a powerful question that can set you free. If I were not already invested in this, would I choose it again today? If the answer is no, then continuing is not a sign of commitment. It's a sign of hesitation. Letting go is not failure. It is strategy. Because every time you release something that no longer serves you, you create space for something better. And this leads us to a subtle but powerful skill, editing. Think of your life as a story, or even as a film. In filmmaking, the raw footage often contains hours of material. But what makes a final product powerful is not what is included, it is what is removed. A good editor knows that clarity comes from cutting, from removing scenes that don't add value, from shaping the story so that what remains becomes stronger and more meaningful. You must learn to do the same with your life. This means reducing unnecessary activities, simplifying your schedule, focusing on fewer things, but doing them better. It means constantly asking yourself, does this need to be here? And if the answer is no, having the discipline to remove it. For example, instead of juggling 10 small tasks throughout your day, you might focus on 2 or 3 that truly matter. The result is not only better performance, but also a sense of calm and control. But even with clarity, courage, and discipline, there is one more element that makes elimination sustainable: boundaries. Many people see boundaries as restrictions, as limitations. But in reality, boundaries are a form of protection. They protect your time. They protect your energy. And most importantly, they protect your priorities. Without boundaries, your life becomes open to interruption. Other people's requests, expectations, and emergencies begin to define your schedule. And slowly, your time stops belonging to you. But when you set clear boundaries, everything changes. For example, you might decide that certain hours of your day are reserved for deep work, and you don't allow interruptions during that time. Or you might choose not to engage in certain types of commitments that don't align with your values. At first, this may feel difficult. You may feel resistance from others and even from yourself. But over time, these boundaries become a source of freedom because they allow you to live by design rather than by default. And this is the essence of elimination. It is not about removing randomly. It is about removing intentionally. It is about clearing away the trivial so that the essential can shine. When you clarify your intent, say no with courage, let go of what no longer serves you, edit your life with care, and protect your boundaries, something powerful happens. Your life becomes lighter, clearer, more focused. And in that clarity, you finally gain the space to invest fully in what truly matters. Because in the end, a meaningful life is not built by adding more, but by courageously removing what doesn't belong. Part 4, execute, making it effortless. Have you ever made a clear plan, set strong intentions, and promised yourself that this time things will be different, only to find yourself slipping back into old habits? If so, the problem may not be your motivation. It may be your system. Because real execution is not about pushing harder. It's about making the right actions easier. This is the final stage, execution. And here, The goal is not to rely on willpower alone, but to design your environment and your habits in a way that makes doing the essential almost automatic. It begins with a simple but powerful idea. Expect the unexpected. Most people plan their days as if everything will go perfectly. They schedule tasks back to back, leaving no room for delays, interruptions, or surprises. But life doesn't work that way. Meetings run longer than expected. Problems appear out of nowhere. Energy levels fluctuate. And when there is no margin, everything starts to break down. This is why creating a buffer is so important. Think of your time like a bridge. If it's built with no extra capacity, even a small increase in pressure can cause it to collapse. But when there is space, when there is flexibility, the system remains stable. In practical terms, this means deliberately overestimating how long things will take. If you believe a task will require 1 hour, you give it 90 minutes. If you think a project will take 2 days, you plan for 3. This is not inefficiency. It is protection. For example, imagine you schedule your entire day tightly with no buffer. One unexpected delay occurs, and suddenly everything shifts. Stress builds, deadlines are missed, and your focus breaks. But if you had built space into your schedule, that same delay will be absorbed without chaos. A buffer does not slow you down. It keeps you moving forward consistently. But execution is not only about adding space. It is also about removing what stands in your way. Most people, when they want better results, think about what they need to add. More tools, more effort, more strategies. But often, the real solution is subtraction. Imagine a group of hikers walking together. Their speed is not determined by the fastest person, but by the slowest one. In your life, there's always a slowest hiker, a specific obstacle that limits your progress. It might be a distraction like constant notifications. It might be a process that is inefficient, or it could even be a habit that drains your energy. For instance, if you're trying to focus on deep work, but your phone keeps interrupting you, the problem is not your lack of discipline. The problem is the obstacle. And once you remove it, by turning off notifications or placing your phone in another room, you immediately improve your ability to focus. These small, one-time changes can have a powerful long-term impact. Because once the obstacle is gone, progress becomes smoother and more consistent. And speaking of progress, there is something important you need to understand. Progress itself is one of the strongest forms of motivation. Many people wait to feel motivated before they act. But in reality, motivation often follows action, not the other way around. When you make even a small step forward, your brain recognizes its progress. And that progress creates momentum. This is why starting small is so powerful. Instead of setting overwhelming goals, you focus on what can be done right now. The smallest meaningful step, the simplest version of progress that still moves you forward. For example, if your goal is to write a book, the idea of finishing an entire chapter might feel intimidating. But writing just one paragraph, that feels possible. And once you begin, you often continue. This is what we can call minimal progress. Doing just enough to move forward without overwhelming yourself. And when you make that progress visible, by tracking it, by acknowledging it, you reinforce a habit. You create a sense of achievement that keeps you going. Over time, these small steps accumulate into something much larger. But there's another force that can either support or sabotage your execution: your routine. Many people think routines are boring or restrictive. They believe that structure limits creativity. But the opposite is often true. A well-designed routine actually frees your mind. When certain actions become automatic, when you don't have to think about when or how to do them, you save mental energy. And that energy can then be used for more important decisions and creative thinking. Think about your morning. If every day you have to decide what to do first, what to focus on, and how to begin, you waste valuable energy before you even start. But if you have a simple routine, waking up, starting with a clear task, you eliminate that friction. Routines act like shortcuts. They reduce decision fatigue and allow you to operate more efficiently. And if there's a habit you want to change, The key is not to fight it directly, but to understand what triggers it. Every habit has a cue, a moment or situation that activates the behavior. For example, you might notice that every time you feel bored, you reach for your phone. That boredom is the cue. Instead of trying to eliminate the cue, you can attach it to a different behavior, like reading a page of a book or taking a short walk. Over time, the new behavior replaces the old one. And finally, all of this leads to one of the most important principles of execution: focus. In a world filled with distractions, focus has become rare, not because people don't know what to do, but because they are constantly pulled in different directions. The problem is not multitasking. It is something deeper, what we can call multifocusing. It is a habit of thinking about multiple things at once, jumping from one task to another, never fully engaging with the present moment. When your mind is split, your performance suffers. Even simple tasks take longer. Mistakes increase, and your sense of progress disappears. The solution is simple, but not easy. You bring your attention back to one question: what is important now? Not what was important yesterday. Not what might be important tomorrow, but what truly matters in this moment. And then you give it your full attention. For example, if you are working on a task, you commit to it completely. You don't check your phone. You don't switch to another task halfway through. You stay with it until it is done. This kind of focus creates a different quality of work. It is deeper, faster, and more effective. And more importantly, it creates a sense of presence, a feeling that you are truly engaged with what you are doing. When you combine all of these elements, building buffers, removing obstacles, embracing small progress, creating supportive routines, and focusing on what matters now, you create a system that works with you, not against you. Execution stops being a struggle. It becomes natural, because in the end, success is not about forcing yourself to do more. It is about designing your life in a way that makes the right actions easier, clearer, and almost inevitable. Conclusion: a quiet revolution. What if the most powerful change you could make in your life was almost invisible to everyone else? Not loud, not dramatic, not something that announces itself with big declarations or sudden transformations, but something quieter, deeper, a shift in how you choose, how you focus, and how you live each day. This is what we can call a quiet revolution, because living with intention in a world of noise is, in itself, an act of courage. When everyone around you is saying yes to everything, more work, more obligations, more distractions, you begin to say no with clarity, not because you are negative or closed, but because you understand the value of your time. For example, instead of accepting every invitation or request, you pause and ask yourself, does this align with what truly matters to me? And if it doesn't, you let it go. When others are rushing to speak, to react, to fill every silence, you choose to listen. You observe more. You think more deeply. And in doing so, you begin to see what others often miss. You notice patterns, priorities, and opportunities that only appear when you slow down enough to pay attention. And while many people are caught in cycles of stress, running from one task to another, constantly overwhelmed, you begin to experience something different. Not because your life is empty, but because it is focused. Your energy is not scattered across dozens of directions. It is concentrated on what truly matters. This doesn't happen overnight. Becoming someone who prioritizes essential is a gradual process. It requires patience. It requires awareness. And sometimes it requires making choices that feel uncomfortable at first. Saying no when you used to say yes. Letting go of things you once held on to. Choosing depth over distraction. But over time, the benefits begin to appear. Your mind becomes clearer. Decisions become easier. You no longer feel pulled in every direction because you know where you're going. You gain a sense of control, not by controlling everything around you, but by choosing how you respond to it. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to feel a deeper sense of satisfaction, not the temporary excitement that comes from doing more, but the lasting fulfillment that comes from doing what truly matters. Because life is not happening somewhere else. It is happening now, in this moment. And this moment is all we ever truly have. You have one life, one path, one chance to decide what is worth your time and your energy. So choose carefully. Identify what truly matters. Invest in it fully. And let everything else fall away. Because in the end, a meaningful life is not built on constant activity, but on intentional living. And if you're ready to take that step, to simplify, to focus, and to live with purpose, then this is your beginning.